YouTube, what's going on? It's Jamar here, Vegas Sense. So as promised, I'm gonna go ahead and put out my review of Roja's Elysium. And as I stated before in the previous video, I was gonna go ahead and put this one out for you all this week. So I've had this fragrance for, I wanna say maybe about 2 months or so now, maybe a little bit longer than that. When I received it, it hadn't really been like super hot yet, like definitely not in the hundreds, but it was warm enough to wear. And definitely I've gotten a pretty decent amount of usage out of this particular fragrance. So I think right now I am ready to go ahead and give a full review of the fragrance. So if you're new to this channel, do me a big favor, like the video, comment on the video, and of course subscribe, and make sure you click the bell notification so that you're notified anytime I drop a new video. All right, so now that we got that out the way, let's go ahead and get into the presentation of Roja Elysium. So Roja Elysium, it comes in a nice little blue box that has the Elysium name and insignia on the top, and then you have Roja Parfums at the bottom. All right, you've got nothing on the top or the bottom, nothing on either side of the box. And then on the back here, you have what says here, a fragrance by Roja Dove. You've got an address there, which I'm assuming is Roja's like headquarters in Mayfair, London. You got Parfum Cologne, that is the concentration of this particular fragrance. I still don't really know what that means. You know, Parfum Cologne. You know, it makes it kind of sound like it's like a mixture of a parfum concentration, but I guess maybe with the strength and performance more so of a cologne, which, you know, if anyone knows anything about fragrances, eau de cologne that's usually like the weakest level of fragrance. So, you know, you have eau de cologne, eau de toilette, eau de parfum, parfum, extrait de parfum, and so on. So we'll definitely get into that. It has like the ingredients and the size of the bottle. Manufactured by Roja Dove, made in England, and then it's got their website at the bottom there. So basically the way the box works is at the bottom here, there's a little part for you to kind of push your finger, and that pushes this part up. And you can see there, the bottle sits really snug and securely within this little box here. And you've kind of got like this suede sort of material, suede or velvet, I don't know. It's probably some kind of fake stuff, but you know, I don't know if it's real suede or not. But it's a really nice texture to it. And like I said, the bottle sits securely in here. And as you can see, Roja has done a really good job with this bottle. This and all of the other fragrances that come in the Parfum Cologne line from Roja, they all look like this. The bottles are basically shaped exactly the same. They've all got like the same kind of caps. The only thing that's different between the bottles are the colors of them. And this one, you know, to me, because it's like a gradient blue, I think this one definitely looks the best out of all of them. I would say probably the best or the next best looking bottle, in my opinion, I would say would be the Creation E bottle. That one is kind of like a gradient red, I believe. But anyway, you've got here Elysium on the top with the insignia, and then Roja Parfums. So just like the front of the box. And then in the back here, you've got a fragrance by Roja Dove, made in England, and then Roja Parfums. just like the back of the box. The top here, you've got this really, really nice cap. This is like a solid metal cap. I don't know if this is like actual gold that they have on here. I doubt it. But I mean, it could be possible. But the cap is really solid. It's heavy. You can tell it's not like some kind of like cheap plastic or anything like that. So I really like that about the bottle as well, or the cap. And then at the bottom of the bottle, you've got like a little sticker that has the size of the bottle, Roja Dove Limited, and then it's got like the address on there again. And then the batch code is sort of written right there. It kind of looks like a laser engraving or whatnot. But yeah, man, overall, this is definitely like one of the best looking bottles when it comes to a fragrance. So let's get into the smell of this fragrance. So this particular fragrance is classified as aromatic fougere type of fragrance. And definitely I do get that from this fragrance, but I would say that this isn't like your typical fougere type of fragrance. You know, in my opinion, I don't really get too much of like a barbershop type of feel from this. This definitely, in my opinion, is just more so like a clean, citrusy, like super fresh type of scent. And I'm just gonna go ahead and spray this on my hand here. And the atomizer on this one, it's okay. In my opinion, it doesn't shoot out a lot of juice, but you know, it gets the job done. And when you initially spray this stuff on, this stuff comes out of the gate really, really strong and super bright. So I mean, the best words for me to describe this opening are strong, bright, effervescent, I would say even sparkling almost. This stuff is as enjoyable as like you basically pouring yourself a really ice cold citrusy beverage, like let's say preferably like a citrusy soda or something like that, on a really hot day. You're extremely thirsty and you get ready to take that first sip, and you feel like the bubbles and like the, you know, the carbonation sort of hit your nose and your lips. Like that is the sort of refreshment that you get from the opening in this particular fragrance. There are tons of different clones out there of Roja Elysium, and in my opinion, none of them, absolutely none of them, are able to reproduce the feeling and the experience that you get from the opening of this fragrance, which in my opinion is definitely the best part of this fragrance. It's definitely not the longest longing part, or I'm sorry, it's not the longest lasting part of the fragrance. I can't talk today, but this fragrance has, I would say, one of the best openings of any fragrance out there, hands down. So just to sort of get into what the opening of this fragrance is, in the top notes you have lemon, you have bergamot, grapefruit, thyme. You also have lime. You have artemisia and galbanum. Now, the main things that you smell with this particular fragrance when you first spray it on are definitely the grapefruit, the bergamot, and the lemon. Those are what make this such a bright, effervescent, and just really sparkling type of fragrance. Super refreshing. It's almost kind of like somebody squeezed all three of those fruits fresh and squeezed them into a bowl and just threw them in your face. You know, obviously that might not necessarily be the best thing that happened to you, especially if you have your eyes open. But I mean, the smell that comes from this is just really, really amazing, and it smells extremely natural. I can't say that, you know, it has like any sort of synthetic smell. And I mean, you would hope not from a fragrance that's $300. But this one, everything in this fragrance is blended extremely well. You can't necessarily smell one particular citrus over the other. They all sort of blend together in this particular fragrance. But like I said, those citruses in this fragrance all blended together like that, they make this fragrance, like, I would say, one of the best openings ever. Now in the mid, you do have you know, a few florals in here, but then you do still get some fruitier smells in here as well. So in the mid, you have lily of the valley, rose, jasmine, black currant, apple, pink pepper, vetiver, cedar, juniper berries, and cypriol oil. Now, the main player from the mid that I would say that you smell is definitely the black currant, the pink pepper, the juniper berries, and I would say the jasmine. Those start to come out, I would say, after like a few minutes of you spraying this on, especially the black currant. The black currant in this fragrance, I would say, is probably one of the best implementations of black currant that I've smelled in any fragrance that I've smelled anyway. I know it is like in Silver Mountain Water. I want to even say black currant is in Aventus as well. But the black currant in this fragrance, I would say, is definitely a lot more evident, and it gives this fragrance, I would say, it gives it its character, I would say. It's definitely something that you smell for a little while, you know, right before you sort of get to like the main part of the dry down. So it doesn't stick around the entire time, but it does sort of linger around, I would say, I guess in what you could consider to be like the opening, which, you know, it pretty much lingers around for maybe about the first 20 or 30 minutes or so. Now, also, like I mentioned, there is some vetiver in this particular fragrance, but it doesn't seem to be like a dirty type of vetiver, and the vetiver doesn't seem to be anything that's like super strong or overpowering. I would say probably the most noses, you really can't even hardly smell that it's there, but it is there. Now in the base, you have ambergris, leather, labdanum, vanilla, and benzoin. I don't really get any sort of benzoin from this. Definitely don't get any vanilla either at any point in time in this fragrance. But what I do get a lot of is that ambergris smell. And I think that the ambergris smell, that's what sort of contributes to this fragrance being a fragrance that you easily sort of become nose blind to. And I think that that's why a lot of people sort of give this fragrance bad marks, saying that the longevity on it isn't all that great. I do believe that it's pretty much from your nose just going anosmic to it. I have noticed that it happens to me probably like around the 4 or 5 hour mark. Now also around that time, I would say this is definitely like a dead skin scent around that time. So for the most part, I would say for maybe about the first 2.5 hours or so of wearing this fragrance, especially if you wear it outside in high heat and direct sunlight, this projects pretty well. And, you know, that is, I would say, the only bad mark that I can give this fragrance is it really only performs good when you wear it in direct sunlight and when it's super hot. If you wear this fragrance inside in air conditioning, you may be able to get maybe about an hour and a half of projection out of it. But it's not going to be as strong as if you were to, say, for instance, be outside on the strip with the sun beating down on you and, sweat coming off of your body. This is, I would say, where this fragrance would perform a lot better in those type of situations. If you wear this at work, I would say after probably an hour and a half, 2 hours, you're not really going to smell it anymore. You may get whiffs of it throughout the day depending on like how the air hits you or how you move around, but you're really not going to smell it too much. Now, in terms of overall longevity, I've worn this several times, and what I've noticed is if I go to smell my arm about 8 hours later, it is still there. It's not giving off any sort of projection. And I would say even at that point, like even if I move around a little bit or if the air hits me a certain way, you don't really smell it. It's like a super close skin scent. But if you kind of do like this, and you don't have to really dig in like super hard or try to smell it super closely, you do still smell it there. So I don't want to give this super, low marks as far as longevity goes, because the longevity, I would say, as long as it's still there, it's there. The longevity on this one is okay. Now, is the longevity and projection of this as good as something like Alexandria Fragrances Zion? No, it's nowhere near that. Zion, I've gone like 12 hours and had that still be evident on me without really even needing to try to smell it. This one is nowhere near that type of performance. And Zion does pretty much nail, I would say, the dry down of this fragrance. But Zion does not come anywhere close to getting the opening right of this fragrance. Zion is a lot more greener. It's not as refreshing or as bright as this particular fragrance goes. And it just, I don't know, there's something missing in Zion that this one has. Sensual Obsessions, their version of the fragrance comes a little bit closer to the opening, not 100%. I would say the dry down of it is where the Sensual Obsessions, to me, is a little bit off. And also the Sensual Obsessions version, at least on my skin, it doesn't last that long. Now that might have changed here with like recent batches that they might be producing, but I haven't smelled them. So I would say this particular fragrance, even though it is $290 retail, this fragrance is still worth it. It really is. And here's why. This particular fragrance is not a fragrance that is only for a certain age group or that's only for certain situations. This fragrance can be worn by a 16-year-old. This fragrance can be worn by a 60-year-old. I think any age group can definitely appreciate and enjoy this particular fragrance. I don't think it has any sort of maturity level at all. That's how versatile it is. It can also be worn in just about any sort of situation. Formal, whether it's a job interview or some sort of like formal get together where you're having to dress down in like a suit and tie, or just casual date situation, work. I would say this fits all of those situations perfectly. And that's what really, to me, makes this fragrance worth it. Now, like I did mention before, this fragrance does not do good unless it's in direct sunlight and it's hot outside. So this is not a fragrance that I would say that you can wear in the winter at all, because it just won't give you any sort of projection. And if you're somewhere where it's cold and windy, the cold will completely blow this off of you. So I would say do not wear this in the winter at all, because you're just wasting sprays at that point. The spring, you can definitely wear it, but you won't really get as much projection out of it, because like I said, it performs really good in the high heat. The fall, you know, you can wear it, but I mean, same thing. You know, unless it's, I would say, 80 degrees and higher, it doesn't really make sense to throw this fragrance on, because it's so light, it's so fresh. You know, it has tons of citruses in it. It just doesn't make any sense to wear this fragrance anytime other than the summer. But during the summer, like I said, for any occasion at all, this fragrance can be worn. I would say that it's definitely something that is more so preferable to daytime wear, but I don't see how you couldn't get away with wearing this at night, honestly. It is very bright, but if you were maybe going on a date at night, I don't see anybody objecting to you wearing this at night at all right? So overall rating, I'm gonna give this fragrance a 10 out of 10. I haven't given the fragrance a 10 out of 10, not that I can remember, but this one deserves it. The smell of this fragrance is probably the best, you know, that I've smelled of any fragrance. It really is. But you have to get the actual thing, the original. Clones, like I said, some clones kind of nail the dry down of this, which is cool. And it still smells amazing. Some of them come, you know, kind of close to the opening, but there's no clone that is able to reproduce every part of this fragrance. And I do think that this fragrance is a whole experience, which is what fragrances are supposed to be. This is super mass appealing, so I think that it's an easy blind buy. I don't really see anyone disliking this, and I would say that, you know, in terms of likability or compliment factor, this is going to be up there with like the best fragrances right now. So it's going to be up there with fragrances like Sauvage and Aventus, and, you know, Invictus and stuff like that. Not saying that this smells anything like those fragrances at all, but in terms of likability and compliment factor, this is right up there with those fragrances. All right. So again, that's my take on Roja Parfums Elysium. Let me know if you all own this fragrance and have owned other clones of this fragrance, and just let me know if you think that this fragrance is actually worth having the real thing for. All right. So that's Jamar here, Vegas Sense. I'll see you on the next video.